Have you ever stopped to think about the sheer bravery it takes to build something lasting, something really impactful, when history itself feels like it's pushing back? We see these organizations, these legacies, but sometimes we miss the story of just how much courage went into starting them. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're doing exactly that, diving deep into the incredible history, the real purpose and the lasting impact of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated. And for this exploration, we're drawing heavily on the fascinating insights from the book Before You Pledge. Essential information you should know about Black Greek letter organizations and the dynamics of pledging in a culture of hazing. It's by the historian and sociologist Dr. Michael J. Winfield Sr. Really great stuff in there. And the foreword was written by J.T. Childs Jr. Our goal here, it's simple really. We want to pull out those key nuggets of knowledge about this really significant Black Greek letter organization, Sigma Gamma Rho, and basically give you a shortcut to being well informed. Oh, and just a quick pronunciation note before we jump in. The Greek letter rho is pronounced rho.
Just so we're all on the same page. Okay, so let's unpack this a bit. When you look at the origins of Black Greek letter organizations, especially one like Sigma Gamma Rho, it's so clear they came out of a very specific time, a really difficult, often hostile historical context. What's truly remarkable to me is just how much was going on in America. The systemic struggles, the environment, right at the moment they were founded.
It really is striking, isn't it? To really get the full picture, the sheer courage, and frankly, the audacious vision behind Sigma Gamma Rho, you absolutely have to place its birth right in the middle of the extraordinary circumstances African Americans faced in the early 20th century. We're talking about the 1920s specifically. This wasn't just, social change happening in a vacuum. It was a period of intense racial tension, deep-seated prejudice, and very real systemic oppression.
Right.
And it's against that backdrop that these organizations like Sigma Gamma Rho didn't just sort of appear, they were vital. They created essential spaces for community, for uplift, for self-determination, when, frankly, the wider society offered very little of that.
And that backdrop, Dr. Winfield's research paints a very, very clear picture. And honestly, it's disturbing. He writes about how back in 1921, Congressman L.C. Dyer, he was from Missouri, introduced an anti-lynching bill in the House, a really critical piece of legislation. And by 1922, that bill actually passed the House. Think about that. It had real teeth fines, felony charges for officers who, failed to prevent lynchings, and even a $10,000 payment to victims' families, which was a huge sum then.
Huge. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, despite passing the House, the bill ultimately failed in the Senate. It was introduced there 3 times, but it couldn't get through. And that failure, it really highlights the depth of the resistance to racial justice at the highest levels.
Yeah.
And you have to understand the scale of the violence we're talking about. According to research, between 1911 and 1922, think about this, 728 Black individuals were lynched in the U.S. That's just the documented cases. 57 of those were in 1922 alone, the year Sigma Gamma Rho was founded.
57 documented.
Exactly. And who knows how many undocumented cases there were across what was, for all intents and purposes, an apartheid America. You had Jim Crow laws, systemic segregation, and the Ku Klux Klan was disturbingly prevalent among white Americans. It enforced a truly brutal reality.
That scale of violence,
Yeah.
it's just chilling. It
Yeah.
really makes you stop and think.
Yeah.
Given that specific environment, this pervasive racial terrorism, this deep prejudice, what kind of, extraordinary vision and raw courage did it take to even think about establishing an organization like Sigma Gamma Rho then? What does Dr. Winfield say about their mindset?
It's really something. Dr. Winfield emphasizes that their courage wasn't just about, getting by or surviving. It was this audacious leap of faith. They actively chose to build their own legacy, a path distinct from the ones already established, even in a state like Indiana, which some observers at the time described as one of the most racially, culturally, and religiously homogenous places. Very challenging. And it was right there in Indianapolis, Indiana, against that very climate of anti-Black racism that Sigma Gamma Rho almost miraculously emerged.
And here's where it gets really interesting for me. Sigma Gamma Rho holds this unique distinction, right? It's the only Black Greek letter sorority founded on a predominantly white university campus, Butler University. And, it wasn't unlike the founding stories of Alpha Phi Alpha, that's pronounced Phi, and Kappa Alpha Psi pronounced Psi, Sigma Gamma Rho pronounced Rho. They faced their fair share of skepticism, criticism about whether they could even succeed, especially starting out at a PWI.
Absolutely. That alone highlights just how groundbreaking they were, how much they defied the conventions of the time.
So who were these founders? These 7 visionary young women who dared to do this. We're talking about Mary Lou, Allison Gardner-Little, Dorothy Hanley Whiteside, Vivian Irene White Marbury, Nanny McGann Johnson, Hattie Mae Annette Doolin Redford, Bessie Mae Doney Rhodes Martin, and Cubina McClure. And as Dr. Winfield's book tells us, they were all educated right there in the Indianapolis public school system. Some went to Shortridge High School, at least one from South Bend Central High School. But they all came together at Butler University.
Yeah, and what really stands out is their initial purpose. According to Dr. Winfield, the founder, Mary Lou Allison, she gathered her friends specifically to form a Greek letter organization for teachers. See, back then, most teachers got their education from two-year normal schools, but many Black women, they were seeking more. They wanted those four-year degrees. So this reveals a really clear intent right from the beginning to elevate their profession, to create a network for Black female educators, and to really push for higher aspirations within a segregated system.
And it wasn't just about forming any sorority, it seems. Dr. Winfield's book points out that, Alpha, aka they already had a chapter at Butler by 1920. But these 7 women, they actively chose a different route. They had, quote, higher aspirations. They decided to create their own thing instead of joining an existing group.
That's a powerful statement, isn't it? A real statement of independence, of self-determination, especially in that era.
Definitely. And they also found a really crucial ally, didn't they? Robert Lee Brokenberg.
Yes, an esteemed African-American lawyer, a civil rights advocate. He was instrumental in helping them actually incorporate the sorority.
And his significance, you can't really overstate it. We learned from the source material that he later became the first African-American elected to an Indiana Senate seat back in 1940.
Quite an achievement. And during his, 2 decades in public service, he introduced anti-discrimination bills. He passed the law that created the Indiana Civil Rights Commission. He was active in the YMCA, the NAACP.
Right. And President Eisenhower even appointed him as an alternate delegate to the United Nations in 1955. This was a major figure.
Absolutely. And he saw the potential in these young women. He apparently encouraged them, telling them, and this is a quote, "You young ladies have started something great and wonderful for the women of our country."
Wow. With that kind of backing and their own clear vision, these 7 women officially established the founding chapter, the Alpha chapter of Sigma Gamma Rho sorority. That was on November 12, 1922. And then pretty quickly after, on December 6, 1922, the organization was officially chartered under Indiana state laws.
And initially, it was recognized, I think in 1925, as more of a professional sorority, specifically for educators. But later on, they actually revised their constitution. They opened up membership to, quote, desirable young people, regardless of their specific professional interest. The key requirement became 2 years of college coursework with a commendable average, so a shift towards a broader collegiate base.
Okay, so they had this powerful start, this clear vision, support.
Yeah.
But it wasn't all smooth sailing, right? Sigma Gamma Rho definitely faced some, let's call them, growing pains. Dr. Winfield detailed how, in the late 1920s, the organization was really focused on expanding its reach.
Yeah.
There was a member, Delight Hinton, who in 1928 outlined these 3 main goals for expansion.
Right. Foster cooperation, promote the sorority publicly, and crucially, expand with really capable organizers. They were thinking strategically about growth.
Exactly. And by their 4th annual conference in 1929, they had grown quite a bit, 18 undergraduate chapters, 4 graduate chapters. But here's the catch. Only one of those chapters was actually affiliated with the college campus. The others were basically city chapters, set up in various places across the country. And maybe the most surprising part, they weren't actually granted a charter at Butler University, the place they were founded, until December 30, 1929. That's more than 7 years after they started.
7 years, that's quite a delay. And this lack of campus-based chapters, it led to a significant setback, didn't it?
It did. According to research, their failure to meet the minimum requirement for campus-based chapters led to their withdrawal from the National Pan-Hellenic Council, the NPHC, the main coordinating body for Black Greek letter organizations, in 1930.
That must have been a blow. So this raises a really important question. How did such a young organization, adapt? How did they overcome such a significant challenge so early on?
Well, the solution, as one member, Pearl White, later recalled, became very clear. They had to prioritize establishing campus chapters. So Sigma Gamma Rho made this really pivotal change. They revised their constitution again, making that shift from being primarily a sorority for teachers to becoming a national collegiate organization.
Okay, so that mandated enrollment in a 4-year institute.
Exactly. Future candidates now had to be enrolled in a 4-year college or university. It was a move away from just the 2 years of teacher training that had been acceptable before. So what does this all mean when you step back? You see this small group of really dedicated Indiana educators evolve. They adapt. They become this national collegiate force, showing incredible resilience and this unwavering commitment to their motto.
Greater service, greater progress.
Precisely.
And that adaptability, that intentionality, it's also really evident when you look at how carefully they planned and designed the organization's symbols. These weren't just random choices. Each element, each symbol was meticulously chosen to embody their core identity, this dynamic community of progressive, educated women of color. They were crafting symbols that really signified their shared values, their aspirations.
Yeah, absolutely, like the coat of arms. It was designed by Fanny O'Bannon, who served as the second Grand Basileus that's essentially their national president. And it's got all these elements, right? The Greek letters Sigma Gamma Rho, obviously.
Yeah.
But also the lamp of learning, a quill, the serpent of the medical staff, think healing stars, a skull and cross swords, and fasces, all brought together on a shield.
Mm-hmm. And while Dr. Winfield notes the deepest sort of esoteric meanings are reserved for initiated members, what we can clearly see from the outside is this powerful combination. It represents knowledge, writing, healing, maybe resilience or facing challenges. It's like a visual manifesto.
Totally. A visual manifesto for progressive women of color striving for progress. I like that. And the pin. It's just as symbolic. Designed by one of the founders, Kabina McClure, it features 10 pearls right on the edge of a little book. 7 of those pearls represent the 7 charter members. The other 3 symbolize faith, hope, and love.
Beautiful symbolism.
And then there are 2 rubies on the pin as well, representing light and achievement. Plus, you've got the sorority pledge, written by Mary Lou Little, the first Grand Basileus. The motto, greater service, greater progress, that came from Bertha Black Rhoda, a past Grand Basileus.
And even the sorority hymn has its own story written by members of the Delta chapter down in Louisville, Kentucky, and then set to music by Zenobia Laws Bailey.
It really shows how every piece of their identity was thoughtfully constructed, full of intention and purpose.
And that purpose was deeply connected to the realities they faced, especially in education.
Exactly. As teachers themselves, the founders knew, they lived the critical need for literacy for Black men, women, and children in what was, let's be honest, apartheid America. According to research, the numbers were stark. By 1920, the illiteracy rate for Black individuals was still hovering around 23%.
23%.
And get this, in 1922, the year they founded, only about 6.3% of Black individuals aged 25 to 29 had a high school diploma or higher. Compare that to 22% for whites.
Wow, that gap is huge.
Huge. They saw those educational challenges firsthand, and they willingly embraced tackling them as a core part of their mission. So this commitment to education, and also to civil rights, it wasn't an afterthought. It was baked in from the very beginning. As we learned from the research, those early leaders were keenly aware of how vital it was to advocate for equal rights, especially in education.
So they put it into action.
Right away. Organizing literary contests, providing books to young African American students who wouldn't otherwise have them, setting up the National Vocational Guidance Program. These were concrete actions addressing the systemic inequities of their time. It's a legacy all members can truly be proud of.
And what's really impressive, I think, is how Sigma Gamma Rho consistently adapted its service work over the decades. They always seemed to address the most pressing societal needs of whatever era they were in. From education, like you said, to economic hardship, even juvenile delinquency, but always staying true to that core mission of service.
Yeah, tell us more about that adaptation.
Well, according to Dr. Winfield, think about the Great Depression, a devastating time. They established the Sigma Gamma Rho Employment Aid Bureau, specifically to help members find jobs. Very practical, very needed.
Makes sense.
Then, during the war years, World War II, they launched the Sigma Teen Town program. This was aimed at addressing juvenile delinquency, which was a growing concern with so many fathers away at war and more mothers entering the workforce to support the effort.
So responding directly to the social shifts caused by the war.
Exactly. Then jump to the 1950s. According to the source, they established something called Camp Achievement, located outside Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and its primary goal: to foster racial harmony, to promote positive interactions between Black and white individuals during a deeply segregated time.
Wow, that's forward thinking for the 50s.
Very much so. And then, of course, through the 1960s and 1970s, the height of the civil rights movement, they were actively supporting civil rights organizations. They even won the NAACP Service Trophy Award. They backed President Johnson's anti-poverty program, launched nationwide initiatives like the Vocational Guidance Workshop Centers. It's this remarkable trajectory of responsive, meaningful action, always putting that greater service motto into practice.
It really is remarkable, and their impact wasn't just limited to their own members, was it? They seem to have always focused on cultivating a broader sense of community and leadership.
That's a key point. Dr. Winfield details this really well. Right from the start, Sigma Gamma Rho aimed to promote unity among women, and that included women who weren't necessarily members of Greek letter organizations.
Okay, so how did that work?
That's where the Philo clubs come in. The name Philo, which means friend, was officially approved for these affiliated groups back in 1954. And since about 1980, these Philo clubs have grown nationally. They contribute, countless hours of service and thousands upon thousands of dollars toward the sorority's goals. It's a way to extend the network of service.
That's fantastic. Extending the reach. And they also focus on younger generations, right?
Yeah.
Building that pipeline of leadership.
Absolutely. They have the Rower Club. This is for young women, typically aged 12 to 18, who show high academic standards. The Rower Club provides them with training, guidance, covering areas like education, community service, career exploration, fine arts, social skills. It's really about holistic development.
Preparing future leaders.
Precisely. And then for even younger girls, ages 8 to 11, there's the Rosebud Club. The goal there is to cultivate them into well-rounded young ladies, instilling qualities needed to be good students and eventually productive citizens. It shows this deep, long-term commitment to nurturing potential from a really early age.
That's a whole ecosystem of support and development.
Right.
And this commitment, it clearly extends to their major programs and partnerships today, really living up to that greater service, greater progress on a global scale now.
Definitely. According to the source, their national headquarters even relocated to Cary, North Carolina back in 2004, which kind of signals that broader reach. And they maintain strong partnerships with key national organizations, the NAACP, the NPHC, which they rejoined, the National Urban League, the United Negro College Fund. And they have these major signature programs like Project Renaissance, Project Africa, and Project One Mjimu focused internationally.
And domestically, their service initiatives seem to really tackle critical, sometimes overlooked needs, especially for women and children. Let's talk about some of those. Operation Big Book Bag.
Yes, started back in 1996 by the late Dr. Lerona J. Morris. This program tackles educational inequity directly. They collect and donate essential educational materials, books, supplies, even equipment to kids who are at risk, particularly those in homeless shelters or hospitals.
Wow.
But it goes beyond just supplies. It also focuses on exposing students to STEM science, technology, engineering, math fields, offering tutoring, mentoring. It's about opportunity.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Then there's the Women's Wellness Initiative.
Right. This promotes healthy lifestyles. It empowers women to make informed decisions about their health. And importantly, it advocates for better inclusion of African American women in health studies. It covers a range of critical issues: breast cancer awareness, intimate and domestic violence, heart health, diabetes, mental health.
And isn't there a connection to Hattie McDaniel?
Yes. Part of this initiative is the Hattie McDaniel Cancer Awareness and Health Program. It honors the famous Oscar-winning actress Hattie McDaniel, who was actually a founding member of the Sigma Gamma Rho chapter in Los Angeles.
No way.
Yes. And she was even featured on a U.S. postage stamp. So it's this amazing connection, bringing her legacy into their modern health advocacy.
That is a remarkable full circle. What about Swim 1922?
Another really targeted program. It's a partnership with USA Swimming. The goals are clear: promote diversity and inclusion in swimming, boost participation among Black youth, and ultimately decrease the tragically high drowning rates in the Black community through focused water safety education.
Addressing a specific public health disparity head-on. And Project Cradle Care sounds incredibly important too.
It is vital. It raises crucial awareness about the shocking disparities in maternal and infant health outcomes for Black women.
Tell us about those disparities.
Well, according to the source material, Black women face significantly higher risks during pregnancy. In some parts of the U.S., they're up to 12 times more likely to experience life-threatening complications related to childbirth compared to white women.
12 times.
It's staggering. And what's really alarming is that studies show even college-educated Black women experience higher rates of these adverse outcomes than white women who don't even have a high school diploma.
How is that possible?
The research points to a complex mix of factors. The cumulative stress of racism, often called weathering underlying health conditions, structural racism embedded in society, and, significantly, biases within the healthcare system itself.
So Project Cradle Care tackles this.
Directly. through community outreach, through advocacy for policy change, through education for mothers and families, and even through implicit bias training for healthcare providers. They collaborate with major partners like the March of Dimes on this. It's a comprehensive attack on a deeply rooted systemic problem.
That's incredibly powerful work. And there's one more major initiative, the annual Youth Symposium.
Yes, also launched by the late Dr. Lerona J. Morris. This focuses on enhancing both educational and behavioral outcomes for underserved African American youth. It tackles some really tough, critical issues head-on: substance abuse, teen violence, child abuse prevention, building self-esteem, suicide awareness, teenage pregnancy prevention, and even the horrors of human trafficking. These programs, taken together, show this incredibly deep, holistic, nationwide commitment to the well-being and progress of the Black community.
Absolutely incredible scope. Okay, just to quickly wrap up some key facts for you listening. For Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated, the motto, greater service, greater progress. Colors, royal blue and gold. Flower, the yellow tea rose. Mascot, the toy
Pooty Poodles, yeah.
That's right. Their official publication is The Aurora, which started way back in 1930. They boast over 600 chapters around the world now. And yeah, you might hear members affectionately called SGR, Halls, Lady Sigmas, Sigma Women, or, as you said, Pretty Poodles.
Yep.
So when we pull it all together, what does this deep dive really show us? Especially drawing on Dr. Michael J. Winfield, Sr.'s book, Before You Pledge. It paints a picture, doesn't it? An organization truly born out of necessity, fueled by just remarkable resilience and absolutely unwavering in its commitment to service from day one right up to their global impact today.
It really does. And I think it leaves us, and maybe you listening, with an important question to ponder. When you reflect on this whole journey of Sigma Gamma Rho, from being founded literally in the midst of racial terror to the expansive positive influence they have today, what does it really teach us? What does it teach us about the enduring power of collective action? About sustained dedication to improving communities, even, especially when facing down immense systemic challenges. It's really a powerful testament, I think, to how vision, even when it sparks in the face of unbelievable adversity, can truly forge an unstoppable legacy of progress.
It absolutely makes you think about that ripple effect, doesn't it? One group's determination pushing against that hostile backdrop, and how all those individual acts of service over decades build up into this larger legacy, a legacy that's still shaping lives, still improving communities for the better right now. And just a reminder, all this incredible detail and context we've been discussing comes from the book Before You Pledge. Essential information you should know about Black Creek letter organizations and the dynamics of pledging in a culture of hazing. It's by Dr. Michael J. Winfield Sr., and the foreword is by J.T. Childs Jr. We highly recommend checking it out.
Definitely worth the read.
You can find it and purchase it on Amazon.com, or you can go directly to www.questexcelmultimedia.com. That's questexcelmultimedia.com. And hey, we genuinely love to hear your thoughts on this deep dive. Feel free to leave us a message on the message board. Just make sure to include your complete contact information so we know who it's from. Thanks for diving deep with us today.